Good morning. How are you, Jeff?
I am very good. Thank you for coming on. During the day. I don't know what your schedule's like, but it was perfect timing for me. I got my lunch hour pushed back an hour for me, so I can talk to you.
Oh, good. Well, I'm glad it worked out. As you
Yeah, I mean,
noticed, I'm a morning person.
Oh,
So,
thank God you are, because I felt terrible when I saw your response. I'm like, oh God, I forgot, because I remember reading that you guys go back and forth between Texas and LA, and I'm like, oh, I didn't check to see if it was going to be in that spot. I didn't want to have you waiting for me or me be there early when you were somewhere that I didn't know because I didn't check. So,
sure.
but
But it's all good. It's not like I get, my email sends me notifications, so that's always good. If you
well,
phone, if you call, that would be different. You'd want
yeah,
to watch.
I would never do that.
Yeah.
I would always. That's why I was like, I felt a little bad. But if you're that light of a sleeper, then I'm not the problem.
No. 5 o'clock is I'm almost always up before then, so
I'm up
I'm
every day at
crazy.
5 o'clock, and I hate it. I don't know how
Ah,
people can do it and just do it. My wife gets up naturally like that. I don't know how she does it.
yeah, I don't think I've woken up to an alarm in 10 years.
Yeah, she doesn't wake up to an alarm either.
Yeah.
I'm not going to have like you won't hear an intro when we're doing this, because I add that in afterwards.
Sure.
So if it just seems like we're having a conversation and I just jump right into work, because it records as soon as we connect. So, but I don't. I make sure that I pause for a moment and then we start and pretend we're actually on the show. Pretend we're acting. We're acting like we're on a show, and then afterwards
Thespian.
I'm gonna put music around it and everything, and then we'll actually be on a show. But this is, like, I guess, just a read through.
Okay, great.
Uh, do you go over the questions? Do you have any issues or any questions about the questions?
No, I don't think so.
Okay.
And if I do, if I don't answer it the way you'd like, feel free to follow
Oh,
up or ask me for
oh
clarification.
no, yeah,
I'm
no,
assuming this is like a conversation we're having.
absolutely. I don't know if you were there when I spoke with your husband, but it's I'm not like giving you a hard hitting interview. This is more like a conversation where I'm presenting who you are and the book, and how is it, I want my listeners to give you their time of day, which I don't think I have a problem with. It's already out there that you're going to be on, so we're getting
Okay, good.
people keep asking me. They're like, "When's it going to be on?" I'm like, "Chill out,
Oh,
chill out. It'll come. Be
that's
patient." So I'm going to read an intro. I got this intro from your, I don't know if it was IMDb. No, it was Yahoo. It was the book, where the book was,
okay.
and so I got the inside of the book stuff to get your stuff. I'm not going to mention the movies. That way,
Okay.
there's a question when I ask about the stuff you've done. That way, it's not sound like we're repeating it. So,
Hmm.
hey guys, welcome to Changing Hearts and Minds. I got something a little different for you guys today. I rarely have females on my show, and that's not by design. As you guys have heard in the past, I normally have worked around men my whole life, with only my wife being around. She seems to be the only woman that I can talk to and not offend. So I normally try to avoid having any females on the show, just because I don't want to offend them. I'm trying to be a nice guy, because I'm not a nice guy sometimes. But this woman I'm having on, regardless, first of all, because she's married to a military guy and comes from a military family, so I probably am not going to offend her like I would some female that was not associated with the military. And also because I have no doubt with who her husband is, that she would probably just tell me to shut up and get in my place, and you guys have a great laugh at it. So I want to welcome Miss Dale Dye's, or I'm sorry, Miss Dale Dye, Julia Dye, Dale Dye's wife. And I know just a couple weeks ago he was on. You guys were beating me up for that, but she actually is going to get a whole episode here for her, because she's an author, does authors books up on on military life, on history, and now a novel, which we'll get into when we get there. I'm not going to give it away. I'll let her tell you. But she began with Warriors Inc., which is the company that her and her husband own, on the film Starship Troopers. And then there was a whole bunch of movies that she worked with them on after that. She did programming for the History Channel and Discovery Channel, and she acted in a couple movies. She tells her stories because she loves to entertain and see certain secret smile from her readers when she strikes a chord. And that's the thing I'm really going to ask her about, because that's interesting. She spun stories of one kind of another since she was a child. So pretty much I'm taking it that she's a liar, and she's been lying since she was a kid. So we'll figure that out, because that's interesting. She was a child, and you were from Milwaukee? Is that
I
right?
was born in Milwaukee. Yes.
That's her voice. See, she's actually here, guys. Did you go to college in Milwaukee?
No, I we had moved to Minneapolis, and I went to my undergraduate was at Northwestern in Chicago.
Wow. Well, first of all, I could read on and on, but we're going to get to all this stuff. Welcome to the show. Thank you for coming on.
Thanks
Appreciate
for
it.
having me.
Oh no, it's believe me, you're doing me a favor more than I'm doing you a favor. So here's the thing. So actually, it's going to be a little weird for me. Like I said, I don't have females on. I see females. After I just got out of the military a couple of years ago, but I don't have women on a lot because I don't know how to talk to anyone but my wife. And you're the second female I've interviewed in a week, so hopefully I'll be less out of place with you than I am with anyone else. But
yeah, it's a situation I'm somewhat comfortable with. You know, my husband being a Marine has worked around men all of his life, and I'm used to hanging out with guys a lot with what we do. It's a lot of fun because I get to say things and get away with things that I wouldn't otherwise. And it's really fun to make guys uncomfortable.
Right. And and the thing is normal guys who have their military wives understand the situation, and they've been in it. My wife, she was a military brat, met me when I first got to Fort Bragg. She's never been out of the military herself as being a part of it ever.
Right.
She is just as much thin-skinned as I am. You can say pretty harsh things, and she just rolls off her back. So with you, I was like, at least that's what, I'm going to be respectful, but I don't have to worry about saying something that you're like, God, that was kind of harsh, because you're married to a Marine. I mean,
I would let you know.
They don't self-regulate their meters.
No,
they don't.
Right.
They call bullshit when they see it.
Correct.
So I want to ask you a question. So there's something that somebody else asked me. So this wasn't one of the things that's on the question list, and it was just asked like 10 minutes ago.
Okay.
Did you know Dale before you guys both started working in Hollywood?
No.
You did not. So you guys met each other there.
I met him on Starship Troopers in boot camp as one of the actors. It was not love at first sight.
Oh, that really?
What was interesting, though, because of my background with my Ph.D. in military history and anthropology and some other things that I had done, we ended up finding ourselves working on the same films a few times, going, oh, you again, and enjoyed working together so much. So our relationship began with professional respect, and then we became best friends. And after that, we fell in love, which is a really cool way to go about it.
Yeah. No, it's actually the best way to go about it, because you fall in love with someone because you actually can tolerate them, and you don't find out all the stuff that you don't like about them because you didn't like them to begin with.
Right.
That's actually great. I'm glad I got you to tell that story. If I got him to tell me, he'd have just been like, none of your business. But it's because it's kind of, I know how we are about that stuff. We don't like to get mushy about stuff, but you guys tend to bring it out of us. That's a great story. All the guys at home are listening, and they're going to be like, God, I hate Jeff for making me listen to that story, because it makes them remember that they love their wives.
I know, right?
I like pushing the buttons on all these. All these guys like to act hard. I like pushing their buttons and remind them that they're human beings.
Well, but I have to point out, and I know that you know this, but guys don't ever want to talk about this. There's for Marines particularly, that I have more familiarity with that. It's a way that he's trying to protect me.
Yes, yeah.
There's something and maintaining something in your life, because military life is so public. Everything you do, you can't take a shower by yourself. That to have something that's just yours is very precious.
Right. Oh, yes.
And you don't necessarily want everybody to know about that.
No, it's the whole thing that I would never come home in my uniform.
Exactly.
I would take my uniform off at work. First of all, I was a Green Beret for 10 years, so I didn't have a uniform on most of the time. But when I did, I would leave it at work and come home in my civilian clothes, because I wanted there to be a separation between who I was at work and who I was at home, because I can't be both of those guys because of the situations that I was in. So I had to keep it that way. And you're exactly right. It was all about wanting to have something that's mine, that's not part of all the hectic public hysteria that the military has sometimes. And my wife,
and the military owns so much of you that there's something that you can keep for yourself is a treasured thing.
Now, you did not start your time as a military family member at the time that you married Dale, did you? If I read it correctly, your father was in the military, wasn't he?
You're bringing up an interesting point. You're bringing up an interesting point that it has to do somewhat with the book that I'm going to talk about later. But just to introduce that, my father fought in World War II. He was a B-24 Liberator pilot in Europe. And I was never alive during any of his deployments. He was done with the military by the time I came along.
Oh, yeah. I mean, I would imagine. I know you're not that old.
One hopes. But the interesting thing about looking at children in military families was the realization that I was from a military family.
Yeah.
Even though I wasn't a military brat. And that expands how many people that are in this country, in this world, are affected by military service. It goes beyond just living through a parent's deployment. It affects. My father was one of the greatest men I've ever known. He's a huge hero of mine and had a great impact on me. I could never have understood who he was or how he came to be that unless I had an understanding of his military service and what he went through at that time.
Right. No, and it's funny you mentioned that because my son was old enough to understand during the last 10 years of my time in the military what I did and where I was going. My daughter, who's just turned 10, didn't really start to understand that I was in the military or what it meant until after I had retired. And so she still has a family that is military family.
Right.
I mean, we are. So that's what I think you're saying is he gets out of the military, but the family still has the dynamic that they lived under, and that is their dynamic. And so they're still a military family. They're still affected by military service. They still have the same values. They still have to deal with the same fallouts that come or don't come from military service. And that the kids are no different because
correct.
They don't go on the deployments with the dads. At least I hope they wouldn't. So everything else that happens to them and that they have to deal with, it's not just the absence of the parent during that time. It is the change and dynamic of the relationships that are so drastic over time that really I put a lot of pressure on a military family, a lot. And so that's why I love the idea.
It puts a lot of pressure, but it also brings a lot of gifts. A family that has a commitment to service is giving great lessons to children. There's ways of looking at the world, a wider point of view. There's so much more that goes into the blessings that come from that exposure too.
Absolutely. I mean, the kids learn what sacrifice and service are very early because they lived a life knowing that you don't get rich in the military.
Right.
I mean, you do a lot of stuff for a very little bit amount of pay. And I'm not complaining about that. I'm saying that's a fact. And I'm okay
with it. It's just that's not your motivation for what you do. That there's other motivations and other choices. And kids hear what you say, but they believe what you do.
Right. Yeah, you show them more how to act by the way you act than you do by telling them.
Absolutely.
So I'm going to that was really good. So you've been published as an author multiple times and have been awarded gold medal from the Military Writers Society of America. And guys, that's a really big deal for military writers. Very big deal. So your new book, Through My Daughter's Eyes, is different than the books you've published before. And you've kind of went into that a little bit when you talked to everyone what your degree was in and military history and everything. So obviously you've written military history-based books before. And this one is not that. So what is it different about this one?
Well, it is fiction as opposed to nonfiction. It is something that I don't believe has been done before, which is the story of a military man and his family before, during, and after his deployment, all told through the eyes of his middle school age daughter.
That's it's good. I have a middle school age daughter, and I had to stop reading the book for a little bit. I was like, oh God, like that's my daughter. So it is very well. That's the difference. It's a novel, so it's not really a novel though, because what you're talking about is really just it's happening in so many families that you're just really just plugging names in. I think it's not. So my question was was it hard? Did you have to research this, or did you know enough about this? Like you said, you weren't aware or alive when your father was off at war. So how did you research?
Well, this all began from the story of my great friend Dallas Burgess and his family and his experiences. So there was a basis of a story. I went beyond that story. I definitely did research because that's what I do. It's probably more than I ever have to. But whether it's fiction or nonfiction, you're still a storyteller.
Right. Well, I look at this like the same thing. You write the books. I do. My podcast is generally military history, but I still relish in the telling it like I'm telling a story because that's what we are. So
that's what we are. Human beings are the animal that tells stories. That is the thing that we do. The basic definition is, if it reports the truth, it's nonfiction, and if it stretches the truth, it's fiction. But how much overlap is there? You can't tell me nonfiction doesn't stretch the truth, and you can't tell me fiction doesn't report the truth. It's all on what you believe truth to be. Now, like you're saying, that story felt so real to you, it almost felt like it wasn't fiction. That's absolutely the goal. Is it true to your heart? Is it believable that these characters, as portrayed, would make these choices? Truth is more than spitting out statistics.
Right, or coming up with some fantastic story that nobody can believe. And it's
Right.
the truth that is in storytelling is what keeps people connected to the story. So the best fiction
Correct.
out there, why crazy stories in the world, they're people love them because of the truth that's in them. You guys were on Starship Troopers. It's one of my favorite books because it's one I tell people all the time, you want to learn about basic leadership, you read that book.
Amen. I ended up getting involved in Starship Troopers in part because I loved Heinlein's book and I had lived it through high school. I mean, it was in my back pocket all the time, and it was such an important book to me.
Right.
Unfortunately, the film was kind of outer space bug fantasy
Right.
more
It
than
took
an
some it
accurate
took some
telling of that book.
it took away some of the stuff you were learning reading the book, and it made more of the science fiction, the story. But that's why I read the book after seeing the movie,
Ah,
and I was shocked at how much better I liked the book than the movie. And
I
I
think they
realized
both
later
do
that it was
different
the
things.
leadership I was learning.
Yeah, they do different things. The movie's entertaining, and it certainly was influential to me personally for some of the reasons I
Oh
mentioned
yeah, yeah.
before.
Don't get me wrong. I loved the
But
movie, but it's the
and
book was so much
hopefully,
more important to me afterwards. It was just shocking.
yeah, yeah. So hopefully, the people who see the film, just like you did, will be interested enough to pick up the book and get the rest of the story because there's so much in there. And
And
it's not a big book,
no,
but it's
no, it's
dense with truth.
yeah, and Heinlein was really good at that. So if you haven't read, guys, if you haven't read science fiction and you pick up Robert Heinlein, you're gonna finish the books you pick up. They're fantastic.
That's right.
Yeah. That's good. I like that. Um, I am trying to. We went down some rabbit holes here. I'm completely off this stuff. I'm trying to. I have my computer open with my questions in front of me.
Well, what we're basically talking about is truth and storytelling, right?
Yeah.
So for example, in the book I wrote, Backbone, which is an examination of small unit leadership and Marine Corps non-commissioned officers, I went through and through interviews and through talking with people and doing historical research, finding out how to tell their story in such a way as it exemplifies some of the leadership qualities that are taught by the Marine Corps to NCOs. If I just listed those leadership traits and said what they meant, it would be a nonfiction book, but it wouldn't be nearly as compelling, and it wouldn't be as interesting to write.
Oh yeah. No. It's the humanity in the story is what gets it, and that's exactly the way that I do my seminars that I give people on military leadership. I can't just say, hey, here's how you do it. Here's how you apply military leadership to be in a corporate setting. You have to tell them, here's a story where you see
Correct.
how this leadership is applied in combat, in a military situation. Here's a story, and they're both true, of how that same leadership task is applied in a corporate environment. So you can see they are different, but if you break it down, it's the same task that they're doing, and it works in both.
Exactly. That's right. So if I'm talking about leadership, and I can give hypotheticals and statistics all day long, but if I say to try to exemplify something, a simple story like you are lost in the woods, there are two people that you see that can help you. One sits down next to you and says, "I'm so sorry you're lost. You must be feeling terrible. Would you like to discuss how you feel?" And the other person says, "I know where there's a village within walking distance and I will lead you there. Follow me." Which of the people would you rather meet?
Oh, me? I'd rather meet the second one, but
Thank
I would
and
love to hear someone tell me why they'd want to meet the first one.
well, and it's but the more people want to be the first one
Right.
because there's a difference between managing and leadership.
Oh God,
And
thank you so much for saying that. You're
right?
the second person I've had on my show that said that, and that's my big thing. It's not the
Right.
same, isn't it?
It's not the same. So you manage resources, but you lead people.
Right.
And the person who's leading actually has done a better job of calming you down because you now have a mission, you now have a goal.
Right. And many times the leader doesn't even know they're the leader, and the leader doesn't have to be the person in charge to be the leader.
Absolutely.
The leader is just the one that is the driving force behind the group. And sometimes the leader isn't realized until they are out of a situation and the group can't operate, and then they realize the leader was the private over there who's the one that holds us together. So it's great. That's interesting. I saw the book, but to me I was like, NCO, okay. But I was more interested in your other book that you wrote.
Well,
the first one. And I'm not interested in that one, but that one was about military history. That one looked like a epic research project.
well, that is what I love to do, and so, but all of them color each other. So even although Through My Daughter's Eyes is a fictional story, there's definitely research involved. I talked to children who had lived through deployments. I had looked at statistics and how we respond to things. I'm fascinated by the human mind. We are so adaptable and able, the things that your brain comes up with to make sense of things that make no sense is fascinating to me.
And how were you able writing the book? And all right, this is not something that's a secret. There's a lot of personal tragedy and hardship stories out there, but how were you able to keep it a story that was positive and inspiring amidst having to deal with, I mean, you can't go out there and find a military family that you're going to talk to unless you know they've been through it. So that's right. Some of the things that they get through. And my family knows this very well. When I had PTSD, it's dark. Mm-hmm. It's dark and horrible. Not most families don't survive it, and not that they don't survive life. They don't survive the family unit because it falls apart. But you don't do that in your book, as far as I was seeing. You right. Make it inspiring, and and that's what I was completely taken aback by. It's not a woe is me story about the horrors of war from the family's view. It's how families navigate from their specific point of view through this based on who they are because of what they are.
Well, that's where I want it to be. There's plenty of literature out there saying how horrible everything is, mm-hmm. and telling you that you're damaged and your family's damaged and it's all going to fall apart and right. You're screwed up. Okay. I personally don't like the term PTSD. I don't think for most people, now there's some people who really have psychological problems that need medical attention and help, and I'm not trying to belittle that at all. But for most people, going through trauma like combat, emotional trauma, post-traumatic stress is the absolute normal response.
Right.
It isn't a disorder. If right. You can go through all that and not be changed, there's probably something more wrong with you.
Exactly.
So you're not a piece of damaged goods. Your family isn't damaged. It has new issues to deal with. Every family has crisis, whether they're military or not.
Right.
However, it's the challenge here is that with that separation, both sides of the family have a period of time in which they change. And when you come back together, how do you discover each other again? How do you build relationships when you're on completely separate footing?
And expectations have not changed, even though situationally they have.
Right.
I always made a point, and this is just because I didn't want to have one of those lives in the military where I was on my third wife. Mm-hmm. It was hard enough that me and my wife got married 6 months after we met when we were both 18. Uh-huh. But the fact that we are still together now,
that's wonderful.
22 years later, is a testament to both of our ability to not quit.
Yep.
And realize that we're setting an example for the kids of it may suck now, but that doesn't mean we don't love each other and that we can't see a future together.
Right.
And that's one thing I tell my kids all the time. I'm like, don't let the worst times in your life define your life. Let the fact that you survived them and overcame them be the definition of your life. And that's where not quitting and being a better person and taking your experiences and turning them into a learning lesson rather than a woe is me thing. Because right. I have diagnosed PTSD. I had a TBI, which to me
yep.
very well may have the reason why I still forget stuff. But my personality has changed, but probably because of 6 deployments over 10 years. My wife was different every time I came back. She was more in charge of the kids and more the leader of the family every time I came back. And for me, most guys come back and they're like, I got to get a re-control of this. I didn't see it that way. I said, I get home and it's like I'm off. She runs everything. And she was happy to do it. So I just let her run with it. And one day she's like, you please take back over these kids. You've been out of the Army. I'm like, Oh, I thought you wanted to be in charge of them. She goes, no. She goes, you're always the good guy. I'm always yelling at them. Please, you go in there and yell at them for just some reason. I'm like, all right, I'll go do that. But yeah, so it's funny how they don't apply the dynamic. You're right. The dynamic changes every time that separation happens. Because
Correct.
If you are the alpha male of the house and you leave, those kids need an alpha. The mother will become the alpha. And now
well, you hope so. Sometimes they don't.
Yeah, sometimes they don't. But
and that's when I am looking from the child's point of view. What's so fascinating to me about that is this happens in families that when there is not leadership, the child feels responsible and has to take that role. There cannot be a leaderless unit.
No, especially
And
when the
that's a
kid's been
lot.
taught that from their parents' example, that they need to have that.
It's a lot of pressure to put on a kid. There's so many children who, when things start going wrong, think it's their fault because, we're all the center of our universe.
Oh, yeah.
And if I was a better kid, this wouldn't be happening. Or
Right.
I did something to drive my parent away, or what's wrong with me. And to have the child and the parent both come to the place showing that neither of you can fix each other's problems. You can help each other to discover the solutions for yourself. But the journey is an individual one. So how does a kid get to stay a kid? And how can they still support their parents and be part of that dynamic of making things better?
Right.
Kids are way smarter than we give them credit for.
Oh, and they're way more adaptable than people realize.
Well, yes and no. They're adaptable, but they're not so resilient. They're going to remember.
Right.
They're going to remember forever. So how can that be a skill? And like you say, all of us have the ability to go into victim land. When I was young, I had cancer and I survived it, and I had been in support groups with other people, and I had to leave because there were so many people that was how they defined themselves completely.
Right.
Was I am a cancer survivor. I was a victim of cancer. Well, I think I'm way more interesting than that. I think there's a whole lot of other things about me. That's one thing.
Well, not just that, but I'm not going to give that power to cancer being the thing that's important about me.
And that defines everything of who I am. So it's part of me. It's a thing. But it's also, how do we develop other things beyond that to say it doesn't diminish that this sucked and it hurt me.
Yeah.
And I had to overcome some difficult things, and it's always going to be with me. But I also have this stuff over here, and it's much more exciting and much more interesting. And I'd rather think about what I'm going to do next than dwell in that space.
Right, because if you keep living in the past and hanging on to stuff that's no longer moving you forward, then you're not achieving anything that's going to be productive for you. So I tell my kids, always have a goal. Always have a goal. When you reach the goal, pick a new goal that's out there that's different or higher, but never arrive, because once you arrive, you're done. Or once you,
that's right.
And that's just my being in the military. I didn't have that when I was growing up. I had to learn that from the military, and so I learned it the hard way. I was like, I don't want my kids to have that and learn it later, so I put it to them then. But I don't know. It's just for some reason I saw so many military families that it was the father was in charge all the time, and I just felt like it's a disservice to my wife with all the work she does for me to come home.
Well, it makes it impossible when you have to leave. I mean, you're not giving her the ability. She's supposed to just jump in and fill this role that she's not had any experience in. That's completely fair.
And then you see the codependency that could be caused by always never letting a wife be the one that makes decisions. I saw it firsthand. Guys who were on the phone with their wives every single day, and they're like, "Do you ever call your wife?" I'm like, "Yeah, I call her once a week." And they're like, "Why?" I'm like, "So she can have her time, and if there's any issue, she can tell me what she did to fix it, not ask me what to do." I'm like, that makes her in charge and resilient.
It also, on the other hand, makes for a better military because, it's changed so much since Vietnam or World War II, in that you can talk to your wife the second before you're going into battle. And if she's just told you the kids are sick and the roof is leaking, is your head in the game?
No, it's not. Yeah, and I've had experience with that. Yeah, you're right.
It's not, and it's not safe for you. It's not safe for your unit. You're not in the mission. And that's not good.
It's great that you're on my show saying that, because I've had arguments with actual military people about this, and they disagree. They're like, "No, I can get past that." I'm like, "No, you can't, man. That is your wife. That is the one person in the world you are emotionally affected by, no matter what."
And if you can get past it, there's something screwed up about that too.
Yeah. You're the same guy who 6 deployments and no personality change. That's the same guy. There's something wrong there. So Abby, the character Abby.
One of the things that I just want to wrap up this one point in the backbone when I was looking at the different leadership traits is just what you're talking about having goals and stuff. I have a different way of defining bearing, which is one of the leadership traits you hear a lot with the military. And for most civilians, that means, ramrod straight spine and barking, and you have this military bearing that everybody knows you're in the military.
I would say something different.
I define it differently. I think of bearing like a pilot does. It's direction. The bearing has to do with like the guy in the woods I told you about, I know where the village is, follow me.
Right.
And you do because he has bearing. He knows where he is going, or she does. That's the same thing about not staying stuck in the past. That you have a lock.
Right. Not being drawn off course by outside influences and being able to be self-driven, self-aware. And it's exactly the way I define it. I wouldn't use the word like you're right, the way you said it. I would say it's about being stoic and following through no matter what. But it's the same.
Yeah,
it's really
life's a little bit more flexible than that. I wouldn't be quite that rigid. I think of it more like a GPS. So, you're going to make wrong turns.
Oh, yeah.
And then your bearing should be like your GPS and say,
Well,
okay, now we're going to turn right here.
Correct. I would never tell anyone that the destination is the best. There's one way to get somewhere. If you make the destination the point, the mission, then get to the destination however you need to get there. And that's why I wanted to become an SF guy when I was in the regular Army. I hated being in the box of do it this way always. I'm like, well, what if we could do it this way? Well, then go be an SF guy. They do it that way. I'm like, okay, I would go ahead and be an SF guy. So I love being able to use the form of military, the following of rules and having standards, and that's very important to me. But it's also important to have the ability to think outside the box and still be able to accomplish it while not violating those standards.
Right. And that's why I think things like mission type orders are so important, of saying you need to accomplish X, Y, and Z. Now go do it. I'm not going to tell you why or how. I'm not going to tell you the details of how you have to get there. But this is the mission.
I'm not telling you because I'm keeping it from you. I'm not telling you because I'm giving you the freedom to be flexible to whatever you can do.
Right.
That's interesting. I'm going to read that book. That's now. Because even though it's a Marine book, I don't have nothing against Marines. I tried to join the Marine Corps, but they wouldn't let me be a medic, obviously. So I was like, all right, then I'll go in the Army. But
they wouldn't let you be a medic because
all the Marines medics are corpsmen. Marines get their medics from the Navy.
I have a story about that.
Do you? Do you want to tell it? Go ahead.
I'm sorry about a little asides. We were at an officers club, and Dale was at the bar talking to some Marines, and there was a very fancy-looking Marine sitting at a table where I was, and he had all sorts of bells and whistles on his uniform. And we were talking, and I'm trying to, be a good officer's wife and behave. And I talked to him, and I asked him, "What do you do in the Marine Corps?" And of course, his perfect answer was, "I'm a rifleman."
Oh God!
Right, yeah. And then he said, "I have collateral duty as the commandant."
Oh God!
Which is the ultimate Marine Corps answer.
That is every stereotypical. That's fantastic though.
Because what a great answer!
You gotta have a sense of humor to have that answer, even though you're believing what you're saying.
But it was definitely tongue in cheek.
Oh, that's awesome! And he's sitting there, and no one's going near him. So he's all dressed up and everything and his stuff.
Right. And of course, I'm feeling like, oh well. I guess I should have recognized you, sir.
I couldn't see you past your rifle. That's great. I love when Marines say that. What'd you do in the Marine Corps? I was a rifleman. Okay, all right. Oh, good for you. That's what Marines are. It's hard to get Marines to open up. I wanted to tell you, you're obviously married to him. He's so easy to talk to, being a Marine, that it was almost impressive that he adapts so well to the people he's talking to. It's amazing.
He's a great leader.
Oh yeah, no, that's evident because we were talking about. All right, so you obviously work with him or you guys own Warriors Inc. Yeah. So you've participated at Warriors Inc. in doing those boot camps.
For sure.
And I have heard. I didn't ask him this, and maybe I'll ask you because you were there. Is it true that sometimes the actors quit? Like they just can't do it?
Yeah.
I don't need names.
Very
I don't want to
rarely.
throw anyone under a bus, but I've heard stories of them not being able to take it.
It's very rare, and a lot of times you have to understand. Like there's always this story about Saving Private Ryan and the big mutiny.
Yeah, that's what I heard. That's the story I heard.
That story has become so apocryphal. And the reason is it's somebody says a story that's sort of like that, it becomes really good press. Okay. Oh, it's so tough that they couldn't even handle it.
That was not what I took. I took it the other way. They're so soft that they couldn't go 2 weeks.
No, I know, but still, there's built-in pressure valves, and Captain Dale is nothing if not adaptable, and he's not there to kill them.
Right.
The thing is that most people who are going through this process are young actors, and many of them have never been uncomfortable ever.
Right.
It's almost disturbing. Like they have never one night not slept on a mattress. I mean, they don't know what it's like. We're so soft in America, I have to say.
Oh, no. You're not going to find an argument there for me. I think we have a warped view of reality here in this country as a society.
So the first discovery that they all make is that uncomfortable does not kill you. Mm-hmm. Because they're honestly, I mean, there's a part of them that is afraid that they're going to die.
Right.
Because they're doing
that's what
outside.
That's what comfort provides, is security. So once the comfort's gone, oh my God, everything has changed. And that's what I think is brilliant about your guys' method, is taking people outside their comfort zones and then letting them learn you're going to be okay.
That's right. So you can't get them so terrified that it's, beyond where they can come back. But
emotionally damage them.
Right. What you want to show them is, no, this is not going to kill you, because you have the tools you need already. You just have never learned that because you haven't been in that position. So we're going to show you what you have inside yourself. And the great thing about it is most young actors who have tasted some success have found themselves with more money than they ever thought they'd have, fame, women, cars, all of this stuff that they thought that was going to be so cool to get. But they don't have any real understanding of what they did to get it.
Right.
Okay. So because they don't really understand why they've been selected for this special lottery, there's an insecurity to that. It can be taken away from them because they don't know what it is.
Also, I think they're insecure because they know that if it all goes away, they get treated differently. And I think it's both. I think it's very hard to do what actors do because you don't know who really is who to trust. Does he like me because I'm famous, or does he like me because he likes me?
Right. Well, after they go through this training and work on one of Warriors Inc. pictures, they absolutely know that they've earned it. They know precisely what they did, and they know why they've gotten it, and they know that they are the ones who did it. It wasn't because somebody thought they looked good on camera. It's because they earned it. And the confidence and the change in them is very profound.
Yes,
I
would say so.
Some don't even realize it. We'll get a call 2-3 years later going, that was the most important thing I ever did. I had no idea at the time. I'm sorry. I didn't understand it then.
Well, I think that's the case with every kind of situation like that. I don't know. I was different till afterwards. No one wants to tell you because they don't want to make you think there's something wrong with you. But military training and military experiences are meant to transform you. That's their intent. Right. And they're meant to transform you into something that is going to be more adaptable to the military lifestyle, or is going to make you a better leader, better person. Whatever it is you need from that training, you're going to get, and you're not going to notice it's there because you've been trained to focus on the mission and not on whether or not it's important to you at that moment. So
right. It's getting right, because you want, and that's part of the point, especially with actors. It's to get you to stop thinking so much about yourself.
Yep, think about somebody else, because that's what's important.
Nobody thinks about you as much as you do. When you're sitting around worrying, oh my gosh, what do they think about me? Absolutely nothing. They're thinking about themselves.
Yeah, I tell people all the time, what other people think you should be none of your business.
Well, but why are you even worried about it? Yeah. What makes you think that they're even bothering to do so?
How self-important are you that everyone in the world is out to get you talking about you behind your back?
Right.
They're not, but everyone has it. Everyone has that feeling. So
of course we do.
We see where it comes from. We always joke and laugh about it, but I really have, since I've gotten out and spend time doing a lot of this stuff where I'm doing these shows on veterans transition and really focusing on military history as a lesson to guys getting out and stuff like that. I've seen that there's no difference in us as soldiers. Soldiers don't change. The military doesn't change. The mission might change, the situation might change, but the people don't change, and the personalities. And even if the military gets quote unquote softer, less aggressive, I don't feel any less like I was able to accomplish my mission through tough times than some person that was in World War II did. It was the situation I was in called for this. I gave that, and most people think it was too much. That they shouldn't be able to handle it, so they give you an award for it, and so it's all the same going up and down. And that's why it's interesting when I have conversations with military families, with former military members, active military members. you never find us ever not understanding each other, no matter what. I
Right.
can talk to a World War II vet, and if there was any World War I vets alive, I'd find one, and I guarantee you I'd still be able to have a full conversation with them and understand what points of view they had. And that's something
Of
that's
course.
not the same in
Yeah.
any other society, I don't think, other than the military one.
Yeah, we definitely believe that. I mean, we've done Alexander and we've done Starship Troopers, so that's about 4,000 years of history. And the same process works because the soldier's heart is the same.
Right. That's why Hyland's book is a great leadership book, because you focus on what he's doing as a leader, not fighting bugs.
Correct.
So
exactly. That's just the entertaining cover story.
It is. Sure. It's good. So I didn't mention all the films that you had worked on because I wanted to give you the opportunity to talk about them if you wanted to. So is there any you want to tell? Because they're going to already probably have the list on it. But all right? Let me ask you this then. For you, what was the most enjoyable project that you worked on in Warriors Inc?
Well, with Warriors, I would say the combination of Band of Brothers and the Pacific was certainly the most rewarding thing to have any part of at all. I mean, it's just when you've got 10 hours of television and then the quality remains that high. It's there's nothing like it.
Oh, the long-term storytelling like that is.
Yeah.
I think that's what makes those shows so good.
So those things for sure would be intensely satisfying. As a performer and a stunt performer, the most fun I had was on Galaxy Quest because it's just a fabulous time.
So funny you should say that. This morning, I have a guy that I'm friends with. He listens to all my shows. He's like, she was in Galaxy Quest. I'm like, yeah. He's, are you gonna ask her about it? I'm like, no, because I can't ever tell anyone about a Galaxy Quest past Sigourney Weaver. I'm like, I am a child of the Aliens era. It's Princess Leia and Sigourney Weaver. I'm like, I wouldn't have noticed any other woman in that movie. I'm like, so I always feel bad about it. But I'm like, I'll ask her about it. I'm like, because then he said, oh no, she was a stunt woman. So I was like, oh, so did you actually have makeup stunt stuff on, or did you have like lines? Because I don't ever
makeup stunt stuff.
Okay, so it's one of those movies too. You could have been in the whole movie and you would have been in makeup and no one would have known.
Yeah, I mean, most of the time I was one of the aliens, Missy, when she gets shot in the bridge and gets sucked out of when the hole breaks and stuff like that. But it was just great fun and just.
Are you a stunt woman by trade, or did you do that as a something fun to do?
Yeah, I mean, I started out doing my first forays into the performing side of the world was as a fight choreographer, and I did a lot of live shows and lots of Shakespeare, and I've directed live stunt shows around the world. So it's a great time. It's good fun. I was told by a stuntman, his name's Joey Box, on Starship Troopers, very handsome fellow, that I should look into doing stunt work more so than acting. And this stuck with me. This was such an interesting perspective. And I took it in the spirit it was meant. It was not an insult.
Right.
He said, he was very good looking. He said, but I don't have that intangible star quality.
Right.
That makes you want to watch, that makes the camera love you. So he says, I have doubled every good-looking actor in Hollywood, and I have a steady career, and I work all the time. Tom Cruise, Brad Pitt, Leonardo DiCaprio, every one of them.
Yeah, all three of them look different, but he's good-looking enough to fit into that. That's interesting.
He's a generic good-looking guy that your eye doesn't pick out that it's different than the lead guy. He said, you have that. You're a very attractive, great-looking gal, but you're like me. So he said, if you want steady work and good pay, and I'm not a fame junkie. I think our culture has gotten way over the top with that.
God, it's insane, isn't it?
Yeah, like I think it was Dennis Miller said it used to be that you'd slow down to look at the car crash, and now we want to be the car crash so people will look at us.
Right.
I put my baby in a balloon. I mean, like, what is happening? It's so odd.
We view our own experiences through our camera so we can record it. Rather than, I tell my kids, put it down, experience it, because it's good. The camera, you're watching your own thing through a device. Watch it with your eyes.
I agree completely. So I don't have the fame bug. So anyway, doing stunts was a great way of getting involved. And it was just I'm a huge Alan Rickman fan, and watching him just walk around the set with that head on, serious Shakespearean actor, it was just, I just couldn't help but burst out into laughter just looking at him.
Oh yeah, he was fantastic. I mean, there was,
And I'm a big sci-fi geek, so it was a send up, but it was done with love. It was good times.
That's I love that story too about the going from you tried to be an actor, but then you went to it shows a lot about people being able to recognize what they're good at and where they can succeed instead of forcing themselves into something that they're not suited for. And I don't know,
Right.
I don't know if that was the same kind of attitude you had about it, but it's like, look, I could be really good at this. Not that the people that do this over here, they're not good at that. So you excel at what you're good at. Because
Right, yes, but you find a way. So you can find what it is that you're good at and find what it is you love and find a way to bring them together, and that's where you find success. So if you're brilliant at accounting but think that it's really boring to be an accountant, go be the accountant for an international symphony. You can still be part of this world that's bigger than what you think your job is. Right. There's ways of applying what you have that's special to you in a way that will bring passion to your life. And it's when you can combine those things together that you're going to really find success, however you define that.
Right. And I've said it on the show before, and the listeners know, I tell you guys all the time that I speak so well in front of people, not because I learned to be a good leader or learned to be a good teacher. I had this from high school. I went to performing arts high school. That was what I did. Mm-hmm. I never had a problem talking in front of people. Years I had that. I get out. I have this ability to talk. I have this love of military history, as my wife says. Shut History Channel off, please. And so they say, why don't you start a podcast where you can talk about military history and still talk all you want and have interaction and do it. So this is an example of that. But having said that, I don't make any money. I still have a job. But I love this enough to where if I didn't make any money out of it, I'd still be doing it. So you're right. You're absolutely right. I'm happy with what I'm doing, and I don't have to be monetarily successful. I don't have to be
it's nice.
Self-important. Yeah, it's nice, but it's not important to what I want. It's important for me to be happy and important for me to be able to provide. And that, to me, that's when you get out of the military. A lot of guys forget that. And I don't want to get into all that thing, but it's keep your eyes focused on stuff. I want to get into the last part. I really want to talk about Abby from your book.
Yes.
So if we bring back around, guys, we talked about, first of all, your military history background. That's insane to me. Insane. So I just want to let you know that I did not find that on there that when I was looking up the research on you. So when you did that, the guy sitting across from me was looking at me and my jaw was open. I'm like, okay, nice. Military Ph.D. in military history, fight choreographer.
When the conjunction of military history and anthropology is something I can talk to you about for about 12 more hours. So I don't want to get off on that, but it's really a fascinating.
I'm just saying it's interesting arc. I mean, it's massively impressive. So
thank you.
Abby. I was going to ask this question, but I think I already know because of what you said earlier. Is Abby you?
Oh, Abby is who I'd like to be, probably more than anything. She has qualities I admire very much.
Right.
Certainly, you can't write and not put your own voice in there. I think, at least I can't. There's always a piece of you, but it's like you touched on when you said I was this person at work and I took my uniform off so I came home so I could be a different person. We all do that.
Right.
There can be extremes of that, but I'm not the same person with my husband as I am with my mother, as I am with my boss, that I am with Oliver Stone. There's different parts of you that are brought out in different circumstances.
Yeah, you play your part in whatever role you're filling at the time.
Right. So yes, there's definitely a part of me that is much like Abby. I was, however, when I was her age, I was a real nerd and played a lot of Dungeons and Dragons and was not socially adept. So we say.
Well, you didn't peak early though. At least you didn't become the homecoming queen, and then that was the end of it. So I tell my kids all the time, be happy if you don't peak early because you'll peak eventually.
No, I know some of those kids in high school were just on top of the world, and that was going to be the best their life was ever going to be,
Right,
and that
right, and
is tragic.
that is tragic. So
So
I had
I
thought
have
I
a
was sitting
one
here
true
thinking that it was
story.
you as that you were Abby, and I'm like, oh, how do I talk to her about that? And when we started the talk, and you said that you weren't aware, and your dad was gone, so I was like, no, then obviously that wasn't her. But how much of her character came from your experiences, and how much came from the experiences of people you interviewed? She's a solid
I
character. She's a very solid character. I can't see any fringing with her. It's like this is a real person. It reminds me of my daughters, exactly like her.
mm, mm. And what's interesting is that eh, what makes me feel like I have succeeded in what my goal was for this is that you're not the first person to say that to me. I've had fathers with very different daughters tell me, "Oh, that's my daughter,"
Hmm.
but all of their daughters are very different. So that makes me feel like I've gotten to some kind of uh, truthiness, as it were.
Oh,
That
you hit
that
something in there. You definitely did. I mean,
right
that's
that if people are recognizing something there, even though they're also different, then there's a core to her that rings true, and I'm very proud of that. It's when I'm writing, there comes a point where the character starts telling me what to write. There was some things I was writing down, and Abby would literally tell me, "I would never do that.
right,
Stop it! I'm going
right,
to go over here and do this now, and you can write it down if you want, but that's what I'm doing."
right, and that's because the character is real. There's
Right.
no, it's not some fabricated mythical creature. That's that girl is real, and then not
Mhm.
maybe real as in her. There's no Abby out there, but the essence of what she is real. As where I'm reading the book and I don't see Abby, I'm saying I see Peyton, my daughter's name,
Mhm.
and it was not very long into the book I saw that. I'm like, this is impressive, and that's why I asked that because that's character development at its best.
Oh,
When it
oh,
can
you're
when
very
you
kind.
can make people see themselves or somebody else in a character
Mhm.
and that widespread, well done, mission
Okay.
accomplished. Like I said, I haven't finished the book yet because I had to stop because it was getting me emotional, but
Yeah.
it's my daughter's going to read it afterwards because she is a young adult and it is written for young adults. But I don't think that it's just for young adults. I got just as much out of what I've read as I would if I was reading the history of the World War II or history of Ulysses S. Grant. You know,
Mhm.
and it's to me it's you get a lot out of it. So it's a very
Well,
well written book.
yeah, the young adult genre is an interesting one, and I'm so excited about it. Generally because of what's happening. The stuff that's being written for the quote unquote young adult market is really beyond what's being done in a lot of other genres. And it's finding audiences way beyond the young adult field. You know, things like Hunger Games was a young adult book and a
Mm-hmm.
whole series. Harry Potter probably was
Harry
one of the
Potter, yeah.
starts of it. But there are some amazing things that Maze Runner, written for what you would think of as the young adult field, that has really are tackling incredibly difficult topics. I love John Green. Fault in Our Stars. These
Yeah,
are not.
they're not for
This isn't.
kids. That's adult stuff that's going on in those things.
But adult stuff is happening to kids, and they can handle this.
Mm-hmm.
There doesn't seem to be just like the Babysitter's Club, or there was sort of a period of time of more fluffy juvenile literature,
Right.
and those are fun. Everybody likes a good fluffy story once in a while, but kids can handle more than we think that they can handle. They are already thinking about the tough questions and dealing with it. That's not something that we're introducing to them.
No,
And
I'm not
going
sure. I'm
to
not sure it's that
China,
we don't
this is
think they
sort of
can or we don't
thing,
want our kids to grow up. We want them to
right?
stay our kids. That's at least my wife. That's what I tell her all the time. Like, is it, do you don't want them to do it, or you don't want them to do it because an adult does that? Like, you got to
Well,
think about that before you say no to him because he's can handle. I mean, he's in college for God's sakes, but
yeah.
my daughter shows it to me every day. She said something to me last weekend that my wife and me both looked at her and said, "You're absolutely right," and there was nothing else I could say. She diagnosed something and said, "This is just ridiculous. You two should stop putting Christmas lights up to try to make it all work all day for them to go out every year." I'm like, "What?" She goes, "Look, you're going to be miserable tomorrow when the lights don't work
Right.
because you worked all hard." She goes, "So don't put them up." I'm all right, Dad. Santa will come whether there's lights up or not. I'm like,
Bless
good
her heart.
Lord.
Yeah.
It's because the kids. That's the thing. It's the kids grow up and they start teaching the parents, and
That's
that's why I
right.
think where we get scared of it. But you're absolutely right. There's such a they've adapted the way literature is written to children to interject very adult and very serious themes and situations that I don't even know if anyone's noticed that isn't like yourself, an author and a character developer. Because until you said that right now, I never realized how much the first Harry Potter book is different than the last one.
That's right.
You know it when you're watching it because everyone talks about how more adult they are, but it's very dark at the end and very not dark in the beginning.
Right.
It's that fluffy story you were telling.
Well, because the kids are growing up with the stories. I mean, that happened to me with the Little House on the Prairie books. If you read the first one to the last one, they are drastically different as Laura grows up. And they're much darker, much more difficult. I mean, they almost starve to death and her sister goes blind. And I mean, things get far more difficult for Laura from the very first Little House books. And also, so just to bring the conversation back around, Robert Heinlein did a bunch of juvenile novels.
Yes, I would say some of his early work, but aren't as serious as I would say Starship Troopers can be convinced, but when you read it as what it's intended to be, you see the deepness of it. But
that's right.
Puppet Masters and all those books.
Yeah, well, that's fluffier, and you know everybody's got to pay the mortgage.
Yeah. Puppet Masters was a good attempt at just all right, I'll put a book out.
But I mean, he had stuff that was specifically that back then they called them juveniles, and now we call them young adults. But that were specifically for that market, and the things like Pod Came from Mars are really difficult about kids being abandoned by their parents on another planet and how you survive and how you don't survive. And he was one of the first that handled that. I think really started the change into how we perceive juvenile. They're not just Tom Mix and his amazing blaster.
Yeah, or the one with the kids on the island,
Lord of the Flies.
Lord of the Flies, which that's I guess that's one of the worst examples of when you can really get dark. And then you don't realize it when you're watching it because you're like, oh, kids on an island. And no, that's real dark topics that are going on there. And maybe he was one of the guys that helped lead them into it because you know how it is. You know how it is more than anyone. They don't want you to go places that they've never been before.
Right.
Because it's comfortable to stay where you're at.
Mm-hmm.
But it's when people step out and take a chance and go somewhere where other people have, they innovate. And so that I'm bringing it back around to your book because I've never seen this before. I've never seen a book from the eyes of the family. One person perspective of the family the whole time.
Right.
I've seen ones where they jump back and forth. They do that because they're trying to keep people interested. But what you've done here is I am not a military brat. I had no family that was in the military at the time I was growing up. I am 100% the military male member of the family.
Right.
I said I'm going to have my daughter and my wife help me through this book. Untrue. I friggin' felt so happy and thankful for those people after reading that book because I know that everything in that book they went through.
Wow.
And so it's I'm telling you guys, when you get your hands on this book, do not think it's not for you. It's probably more for you than it is for them. Because like you said, Abby is a first character. She knows who she is.
Exactly. She knows who she is and your daughter probably does too. It is have you ever thought about what it's like from their point of view? And the thing that was most interesting to me was to try to think about because she's the narrator for the whole thing, including his deployment. So her description of what he went through in combat was really interesting.
Yeah, that was where I had to stop because it's like, is that what?
What do they think? I mean, what does it mean to her? What does she think happened?
How scary those things must have been, thinking that stuff was going. That's where I had to stop. I'm like, because you want to protect your family from that. But you have got sometimes to realize this is what they went through. It's not always about you, like you said.
And you can't protect them because if you say nothing, then all you're doing is letting their imagination and popular culture teach them what happens in combat.
Right.
Because it's not like they're not seeing combat. It's on the news. It's on the movies they watch. It's it's everywhere. So if you're not going to talk to your daughter or son or children about what it was like for you, they're going to make it up in their heads.
Right. And you don't want to end up being the character in the movie that goes off and makes ear trophies. You want to be whoever you were. But if you made ear trophies, then you want to be that guy, But your kids are going to think you're that guy if you don't talk to them.
Right? But it's not like you can keep them encased in a protective bubble and they're not going to find out that you were in combat, or they're not going to know that you're in the military.
Right. Yeah.
And their imagination may come up with stuff that is worse than what was reality. And they don't have a frame of reference unless you provide it for them.
Oh, yeah. Well, that goes for all types of relationship. I think the husband and wife, even when they're deployed, if you don't speak to each other, they are going to imagine what's going on. It's the same thing why people doubt and question what's going on in relationships when they're not talking. You go to the worst case scenario because that's what you're afraid of. And if you don't get clarification on it, that's the reality for you until you do it. So keep not talking to your wife. Keep not talking to her because you're not going to feel better about it until you get her to tell you you're a maniac. Stop thinking that. And then you're fine. But you're always like, worst case scenario.
Yep. Because one of the things our brains hate more than anything is ambiguity.
Right.
We would rather have the answer be a bad thing, but something we know, than have it be a vast cloud of unknown.
I think our brains are wired to just come up with scenarios to fill in. I mean, that's the whole art of mythology and everything, is understanding the unknown. And you look back and you're like, why did they think that? It was obviously thunder and lightning. But you don't understand. They didn't have a reference, like you said. So they made up answers to certain things.
And that happened. We spend a third of our lives asleep for a reason. And while we're sleeping, we're dreaming, which is our brain coming up with stories to explain sensations and input that it's had throughout the day that makes no sense.
Right.
So it's going to go, okay, this is weird and this is completely illogical, but this is the best story I can come up with based on what I'm being told has happened. Because your brain has to make stories out of input. And
if it's not, you need to get a new one.
That's right.
I don't think you can do that. I edit out all these little breaks when I'm doing stuff, so don't worry about it.
Oh.
You're going to sound very good. It's very clean. And you're not the issue. I do this now, and I've gotten used to just being like, yeah, I'll stop and make noises like this as I'm reading to make sure. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and go through the outro as we end it up. Do you want to put out where to find your stuff, or do you want me to say it?
Oh, either way.
Oh. How about I talk about where to find you in the Warriors Inc. in your email, and you can talk about finding your books at Warriors Publishing.
Sounds great.
Okay. Well, we could go on, and I really had a bunch of questions here that I think I may have touched 1% of, and that, guys, is a good thing, because that means that we got interested in other stuff and went around, and much like all the shows that I do, nothing that I intended to talk about at the end we did, and we got a way better show out of it. So Mrs. Dye, thank you very much for coming on and being someone that can get me to go down the rabbit holes, because I hate the people that don't take me off target. Those interviews are boring to me. I love it when I get talking about Robert Heinlein in an interview. Yeah, it's
Isn't that
awesome.
the best?
Yeah, that's awesome. That was just completely baffled me.
And I just going to mention, this is very pompous of me, but you seem to have stumbled over my name a few times. It is, in fact, Dr. Dye.
Oh. Well, see, I was always taught that Ph.D., it's not your decision to call you doctor, it's everyone else's. But if you were a medical doctor, I actually don't know. I didn't know that. I didn't know you were not a doctor until just now when you were saying you are a Ph.D. in this. So I can't find anywhere. I didn't see it anywhere.
I'm teasing you. We like that around, because things come to Mr. and Mrs. Dye and we respond Doctor and Captain. That's much fun.
It's great, because it's like, you were a captain, but that's a 4-year needed degree. I'm a doctor. Please.
He put a lot more into his title than I put into mine, let me tell you.
Not saying he didn't, but that's a good way to dress him down. Little hint there. Be like, Captain, please, Captain, I'm a doctor. I'll be getting an email later this week. Jeff, you need to call me. We need to talk. So, yes, sir, Captain. All right. I want to thank you very much for coming on. It's been a great time on talking to you, and I'd love to get you back on again and go down a rabbit hole on military history on any topic you want, if you want to. So just send me an email if you want to just go riff about that stuff, because that's what most of my shows, if you listen to them, are all that topic line. We talk about an instance in military history to the end. And I bet you probably want to come on after listening to one and be like, let me tell you how you got that all wrong.
Well, I'd love to try. It's been a pleasure. So I'd love to do it again anytime you say.
Yes, ma'am. And again, I want to thank you and your husband, because you guys have both you guys are doing me more of a favor than I'm doing you a favor. You guys really very fast to respond to me, very open to coming on when you guys had, I could have been anybody, but you guys were veteran stuff. Yeah, come on. And he was very quick to be like, you need to look at my bride as he worked. I was like, oh, there's the Marine term.
Yeah, that's right.
Look at my bride's writing. And I'm like, okay. And I looked at it, and that's when I sent you the email. I'm like, oh yeah. But so thank you. Great. And thank you for the book, because like I said, I've learned so much from it already. I haven't finished it yet. Like I said, I got to gauge how emotional I get, but only because I don't want to be a babbling idiot with my kids. So I cry like a real man, alone in a room by myself. That's what I talk.
Don't be afraid to babble in front of your kids. They need to see that side of you too. That's okay.
No, they see it. They see it. The Giants have been losing all season. I've been crying every Sunday. So I'm just kidding. But thank you. And then you can go see Dr. Julia Dye at juliadye.com. That's where you can email her at. You can find her name and stuff about her on WarriorsINC.com. And where can they get your book stuff at?
Well, you can get it on Amazon. You can go through WarriorsPublishing.com. And we also have a Facebook page, easy to find there. I also just want to promote one last thing, if I may. We are donating a portion of...
You guys can promote whatever you want.
Just a portion of the profits are going to a charity that we believe in, which is Our Military Kids. So ourmilitarykids.org is a great organization that gives, pays fees for athletic, fine arts, and tutoring programs for kids of military families. So I encourage you to check them out as well.
Oh, I'm going to check it out because I'm a big advocate of the fine arts getting back into school. I went to the Performing Arts High School, and I was still able to become a Green Beret in the Army. So there's nothing wrong with fine arts. It gives me a better understanding of myself and what I can do and what I can't do. So
and learning to communicate artistically and it helps you in every aspect of your life.
Yeah, sports and fine arts stuff outside the general stuff has to stay in school because there's more lessons learned there than people realize.
That's right.
So I agree with you. And thank you again for coming on. And I'm going to there's going to be on the show page notes, guys, you're going to have all the links for all this stuff. And I'm going to show you right where to go to get this book. And then I'm going to ask you guys questions individually. I'm going to email you. I don't know who you are, but you're going to get an email from me. I'm going to ask you questions. Make sure you read it. I'm not going to do that to you guys, but you should read it. And I'm going to promote the hell out of this because I think it's great.
Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you very much. Right. I'm going to let you go have the rest of your day. I'm not going to be emailing you anymore at 5 a.m. your time. That will not be happening.
All right. Take care and thanks for everything.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you.